y'all. Welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is another beautiful day to be in the kitchen. Today, I'm going to share with you my recipe for this delicious cranberry pound cake. Now, a traditional pound cake doesn't have any particular fruit or nut add-ins, but I'm going to take my classic cream cheese pound cake and I'm gonna dress it up a little bit by adding in some fresh cranberries. Now these are in season right now. They are cheap and cheerful at the grocery store, and you can use fresh or you can use frozen. Today I will be using frozen, and I'm gonna put it together in this cute little bundt pan and make a delicious cranberry bundt pound cake. And that's what's coming up next. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like, share, comment button, follow for more tips and tricks, roll up your sleeve, put your apron on, preheat your oven to 335 degrees, and get ready, because today we are baking a pound cake. Now, I'm just going to run you over the ingredients really quickly, because a standard pound cake, usually the ingredients doesn't vary beyond your typical. It's only the proportions that vary. Now, before I go over the ingredients, I'm going to talk about the cake pan. Now, this is a 8-cup bundt pan. It's a fluted bundt pan. Anytime it has the center in it, that's called a fluted bundt pan. And as you can see, this one got all these little, it's got a pattern to it, and you can get them very intricate. But I recently bought this one, and I like the design that's in it. It's kind of like, I guess, a mosaic paisley. But the thing that you need to know about baking with these pans is you must make sure that you spray them well with your baking spray. Now, I like Baker's Joy. That is what I always use. It already has flour in it, but you can use the traditional butter and flour. But sometimes getting into all of these little teeny grooves can be a nightmare. The spray variety is the least threatening because you just spray it really good. The secret to your pound cake not sticking in these is actually, yes, it is the spraying. Make sure you give it a full coverage, but mixing the batter correctly. Because if there's any sugar that's not completely blended in, yeah, that's what sticks to your pan, and that's what makes your cake stick. And then when you dump it out, it's misery and sadness, and you're coating in powdered sugar to hide it, which that happens with me. But just make sure you give the batter a proper fold, and that is what helps prevent your cakes from sticking, on top of making sure you grease the pan properly and using the correct temperature too, because if it's too high, your cake is gonna burn, it's gonna over brown. If your temperature is too low, your cake will be a little bit pale. So a good range of temperature for a pound cake is 325 to 335 degrees. Now, this is slightly off topic. You can do a cold oven pound cake where you preheat your oven so you put the cake into a cold oven and then turn the oven on, and you preheat it to 350 degrees. The thing about a cold oven pound cake is, that's my oven letting me know it's ready. The thing about a cold oven pound cake, they work, but if the batter is not, everything isn't in a good balance, your cake can have a tendency to collapse sometimes. So I just stick with the range of between 325 to 335. And you don't preheat your oven too far. The idea of a cold oven pound cake, by the way, the history of it was to save energy, save gas during leaner times. But if you preheat your oven before you begin to bake, there is no need to preheat the oven an hour early. I like to preheat the oven right when I'm starting, so my oven isn't just over there merrily on, burning up energy, wasting, which is not at all efficient. And and I don't forget. So if you preheat that oven right when you get started, you don't forget, and your oven is the perfect temperature. So I'm going to literally spray this pan with Baker's Joy and have it ready to go for the rest. Now, speaking of the recipe, let's run over it really, really quickly. So as I say, here I have fresh cranberries because this is a cranberry pound cake. They are tart, you know this, but a pound cake is fairly sweet. A pound cake has a considerable amount of sugar in it compared to most cakes. So, the balance will mellow it out nicely. Plus, I'm going to soak this cake in a vanilla bean syrup. So that's going to add even more sweetness to a cake that's already quite sweet. The cranberries are just going to give you a nice balance of flavor. You can substitute this with blueberries. You can substitute it with You can substitute it, the cranberries with blueberries. You can substitute for raspberries. You can substitute for raisins. There is nothing wrong with putting raisins in a pound cake. You can substitute for a lot of different things and just change up the season by simply changing up the fruit. So, fresh cranberries. And then I have, of course, some sugar. We'd be making the cake without the sugar. I've got some eggs, room temperature eggs. You can use either Greek yogurt or cream cheese. My original recipe calls for cream cheese. Today I'm using Greek yogurt. It will help to add a nice balance and flavor to it because the cranberries will add a nice little bit of tart, but the Greek yogurt would add a nice little bit of creaminess. I've got some butter. Of course, butter makes it better. I've got some flour, and I also have a bit of cornstarch in here as well. I have some heavy cream because we want the batter to stay rich. That's the key to that luscious texture of a pound cake is a good amount of fat, to be perfectly honest. And then, you know, I love vanilla bean paste. You can use vanilla extract. You can use orange extract. If you wanted an orange cranberry pound cake, that would be very yummy. Or you can use rose water. That is a traditional flavoring. It's an old-timey flavoring. People don't use rose water for flavoring. You only use a small amount. I do have it. I do use it. You only use a very small amount. You can also use almond extract. You can use orange extract. You can also not add any extract at all. In some cake recipes, they don't call for any. I also have some baking soda, and I have a bit of fine salt. So those are the ingredients. Let's put it together. Now, today because I'm making a small, and for me, this is small, pound cake. I'm just going to use my small stand mixer. I don't make a lot of small cakes, so I usually use my large stand mixers. And you can also mix this in a hand mixer. You don't need the big one. Now, I've got softened room temperature butter. Don't use cold butter. You'll be beating forever and the texture of your cake will never turn out right. Before I add the butter into the bowl, always add in the sugar. Because if you don't, the butter can sit at the bottom of the bowl and it's just not nice. So I always add the sugar in first, then add the butter. Save the butter wrapper because there's still butter on the butter wrapper and you can use it for something. I don't know, maybe the skillet when you're scrambling eggs in the morning or something. And I need just a half a stick of my remaining stick of butter. You don't need the whole stick. There we are. So 1.5 sticks of butter. Reserve the other half of the stick. And I am going to go ahead and add in some vanilla bean paste. Now I need to open this one because this is a brand new bottle. I go through quite a bit of vanilla bean paste, I have to confess. Okay, and give it a little shake. And then I'm going to add in a hefty amount. I'm going to add in about 2 teaspoons. 1 and 2. Now, you blend the vanilla or any of your extracts in with the fat because that's where the flavors start to bloom. So I'm just adding it right in with the sugar and the butter because that's where your flavors start to really, really bloom. If you were adding cinnamon or nutmeg or ginger or anything else to this, you would add it in at this point as well. Plus, you don't have a tendency to forget to add those things. So I'm going to get this on my stand mixer and start creaming my butter. butter and sugar and vanilla together. There we are. Lock it. Always remember to lock it, because sometimes these can get a little excited. These tilt head mixers, they can get a little excited and bob up and down. Kind of like me when I'm getting started on a new recipe. So I'm going to start off on a low speed. And you're just going to start mixing the butter and the sugar. Okay, now before I start to go map the mixing, I'm just gonna scrape the bowl down, and then I'm gonna proceed with the mixing. Especially if you're using the vanilla bean paste, it can kind of stick to the edges a little bit. So just give it a little teeny scrape. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I always encourage scraping down the bowl. That can actually cause some cake recipes to split, because it can break the homogenization of your cake batter. Kind of like sugar crystals can make your caramel seize. If undissolved sugar crystals hit that caramel, which is the melted sugar. It's the same thing here. You don't have to be as fussy, but you do want to make sure that you scrape down the bowl. It only takes a couple of seconds. And then just mix. I can raise my speed up. That smells nice. There we are. Now I am going to take a tablespoon of my flour, and I'm going to sprinkle it into my batter. That will prevent, when you add the eggs, that'll prevent the mixture from curdling. And just blend this in just a few seconds. There we are. Okay. Now I'm going to add my eggs, and I'm going to separate my eggs. You don't need 4 eggs. You can get away with 3 eggs. But I'm going to use 4 eggs. But you could, as I say, you could get away with 3. So I'm just going to separate it. You want to make sure, because we're going to whip these egg whites, you want to make sure that you do not get any, let me move this out of the way, you don't get any of the yolk into the whites, because the whites will not whip if there is some yolk in them. So just carefully separate your eggs. Well, there she goes. Now, if that happens to you, and it does happen, I'm actually really glad this happened, because I'm going to show you exactly what to do. Take the egg shell and scoop it out quickly. Don't waste any time. And you can see how I didn't get any yolk in there, even though it fell in. You just have to be kind of quick about doing that. If you're nervous about doing this and you're afraid you might burst a yolk like that, because it can happen very easily, especially if your eggs are at room temperature, you can do this with your hands. You can also do it one by one over a separate bowl, and then just add your egg whites to your main bowl, if you're so inclined. Okay, and the last egg. You just want to be careful. You can also do this when the eggs are cold, and they're less likely, your yolks are less likely to burst, because they're very cold, and they are fat, so they will hold together better. Okay, and these yolks are just beautiful. They're almost as orange. Yeah, about as orange as my jacket. Okay, that's very messy, but that's done. Okay, so we're gonna set the whites aside, and we're gonna whip them in a bit. Now we've just got egg yolks in here, and we're just gonna mix these in. You don't need to go mad mixing them in. Just make sure that they're thoroughly combined. Now we're gonna add in the remaining ingredients here: the cornstarch, the Greek yogurt, and the heavy cream. Start off with the flour mixture. It's gonna look a little bit thick. Now I'm going to add in some of the Greek yogurt. More flour. You're just stirring. You're not trying to go crazy mixing. Turn this down just a tad. And don't forget, add in your salt. Do not forget to add in your salt. I'm adding in 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Just sprinkle it right in. You can mix it in with the dry ingredients if you want to. You can also sift the dry ingredients. And I'm going to add in 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. So just go ahead and add that in. Now you may say you don't need the baking soda because you are whipping the egg whites, which will give you the volume and the rise you're looking for. And that is absolutely true. But baking soda does more than help to lift the batter. Baking soda helps, it will lower the pH, which will give you a more finer, softer texture of a pound cake. That's why the pound cake recipes that I use almost always call for baking soda instead of baking powder. So that's why I'm using it, because it will give you a nice and creamy batter. Mix that in. Add in some of the heavy cream. Stop. And then more flour. Reserve a tiny bit. The last of the Greek yogurt. Heavy cream. Oh, she goes in. And I'm going to reserve about a tablespoon of the flour. And I'll explain why. That smells good. Stop, 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 stop. You don't need to keep mixing at this point. You don't need to keep mixing. Just stop it right there. Now, take the paddle attachment off. So at this point, the cake batter is pretty thick. Yeah, it's very thick because we don't have the whites in here. The whites are not here. So we have a very, very thick cake batter, but that's okay because it's going to soften up, loosen up once we whip those egg whites. So I am going to whip my egg whites next. So just hang on to this and we're going to whip the egg whites. Okay, I have another clean mixer bowl. The reason why the emphasis is on the clean bit is because if your mixer bowl has any fat or anything in it, doesn't mean your mixer bowl is dirty. Please understand. But if, say for instance, if you were mixing the cake batter and then you took it out and put it into another bowl and then decided to whip your egg whites in that same bowl, which is perfectly fine, that you can do that. You just want to make sure that you wash it thoroughly and then take a little bit of white vinegar and wipe it out thoroughly, because if there's any trace of anything in the bowl, your egg whites won't whip properly. Speaking of the egg whites, here they are. Into the bowl she goes. And onto the sand mixture she goes. And I'm just going to start mixing these before I start whipping these. Why mixing before whipping? You have 4 separate egg whites here. So you're mixing them together before you thrust them into the whirl of whipping. So that'll take just a couple of seconds. Okay, so the egg whites are nice and whipped, and I see a few bubbles. Now I'm going to add in some cream of tartar. Now, cream of tartar, we're only using a pinch. Cream of tartar is leftover acid from winemaking. It has no flavors or smells or anything, but it will help to stabilize egg whites and prevent them from collapsing too quickly. So I'm just going to add in 1/8 teaspoon of cream of tartar. No more. You don't need much. And now I'm going to start whipping the egg whites. Okay, now I'm going to show you the egg whites really, really quickly. So they're getting there. Okay, and you just want to check and see where they are. They're at soft peaks, and I'll show you what soft peaks mean really quickly. So just take a little bit. They won't hold anything at this point. And some people will stop it there and do the remainder of it by hand, just to make sure they don't over mix it. Because the stiffer the egg whites, the harder it is to fold them into the batter. That's why you want to make sure that you don't over mix them. It can be a little difficult to fold them into the batter if they are very stiff. If they're too soft, it's just like another liquid ingredient, and they don't add much volume to the cake itself. We are going for soft peaks, not stiff peaks, not droopy peaks, soft peaks. Stop, because it goes really quickly. Okay, I think we're at soft peaks now. Let's see here. Just you pull it up, and then there we are. You should get a very little sag. But the egg whites will hold like that. Show you that again. There we are. And if you weren't sure, you could give it a couple more whisks at this point. Incidentally, you can do this by hand. You don't need a machine. I've done it by hand. It's not actually as difficult. I know some people go, when it gets difficult is when you have to do like 20 egg whites by hand. Yeah, that is difficult. And I'm not going to do it over my head. No. I just got my hair done. I'm not going to do it over my head. But there. And they will stay without falling out. Not going to do it over my head. No. Okay. So we are done with the whisk attachment. We are done with the stand mixer. So I'm going to put this away, and then we will combine the two mixtures. Now, this batter is obviously very, very thick. It ain't moving much. So we need to lighten it by first folding in some of the egg whites. So I'm just going to take some, about a quarter of the egg whites, and then just quite frankly mix it in. Just be a little quick about this. What you're doing is you're loosening the batter up, because you cannot, it would be a nightmare to try to fold those egg whites into a very, very stiff batter. So just fold it in. There we are. Now you want to go ahead and fold in the remainder. You can do this in 2 stages, or you could do it at once. And I think I'm going to do it in 2. Only because I'm showing you. Otherwise, I would do it all at once. So you just take it, come from around, and then cut right through. Fold through and cut right through. Come from around, fold through, and then fold through again. And just repeat that process like that. Cut through, and then stop. Don't forget about the remaining. Okay. And then just fold the rest of it in. Now, my auntie Mary Younger, she always made a whipped egg white pound cake. She never used leaveners in her pound cakes. Never. It just was not done in her day. You didn't need leaveners for a pound cake, because egg whites is a natural leavener. And if you were buying an extra ingredient that was not necessary for a cake, why would you do that when the egg whites will do that? So in her day, this is how pound cakes were made. But every pound cake does not necessarily require that you do this. But this is a very old-fashioned technique. Now, as you can see, that's pretty much mixed in. I don't see any more egg white. I'm not going to keep on mixing. That only took a few seconds. Be careful, don't overdo it. Now, don't forget about the cranberries, because this is a cranberry pound cake. So, don't forget about that little flour we reserved. I am going to add that to the cranberries. And then I'm just going to give them a little toss. And this little bit will help them, prevent them from just dropping right down to the bottom of the pound cake batter. And then, with flour dusted fingers wiped off, just fold in the remaining, fold in the cranberries. Be gentle at this point. Be very gentle and be deliberate, meaning fold exactly where you mean and need to fold. If you see some batter, that's it. Don't fold anymore. That's enough. Even me with my, just a little more, no more. That's enough. Now it's time to get into the cake pan. So here is my beautiful bundt that I have generously, and I mean very generously, sprayed with my Baker's Joy. This is good stuff. Stock up on this stuff when you see it on sale because it's very, very good. By the way, the cake recipe. Now I am going to drop this batter down into the cake pan. Drop it in. Smells good. In she goes. Okay, now I'm not going to vex myself with the last little bit of this. I have a tool that helps me scrape bowls and get everything out. Because like I say, I'm not a spoon licker. I'm not a bowl licker. I'm not a batter beater licker person. So a bowl scraper works really, really nicely. You just swoop around in there and get it all out. One and done. There we are. And then scrape it right into the bowl. Where the sunshine's going? It was so sunny just a few minutes ago. Okay, now just take your spatula and just smooth this out. Just like that. And then give it a little shimmy shake. This just settles it into the pan. Don't bump this one. Just give it a little shake and make sure that it's settled into the pan. Now, if you were not going to do the sugar syrup for this cake, which I am going to do, you can sprinkle the top with plain sugar. Just the top. Oh, make sure it don't hit the sides. And don't do the inside of it because, again, it goes back to the sugar, making your cake stick. And it would get a nice craggly top. But I am going to pour a vanilla and orange simple syrup over this cake, a soaking syrup. So I'm not going to add any extra sweetness at this point. It'll be ready for all of the extra sweetness we will be adding. So into the oven she goes. And this cake is going to bake for right around 50 minutes. It's still a pound cake, so it needs to bake for a considerable amount of time. So into the oven she goes. In this little saucepan, I have a half a cup of water and 1/4 cup of sugar. And I'm just using regular white granulated sugar. You can use vanilla sugar, but I'm going to add vanilla beans, so I thought that may be a little bit extravagant. And I have an orange here, and I'm just going to peel off a few strips of the orange. This could be a little tricky, and it never comes off in all one piece, so I'm just going to pull off a couple of strips, pieces, however I can get it off. That smells good. You could have added orange zest to the cake, but I didn't want to. I'm kind of happy with just adding a little bit of orange to the simple syrup and letting the cranberries shine in the cake itself. Okay, so just a few nice strips. You don't want to overdo it. Orange can be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to put this on the stove and heat it up and bring it to a boil and let it simmer for a couple of minutes until the sugars dissolve and the entire thing is perfumed with oranges. Now, the cake is out of the oven and thank you, Jesus, it looks so good. Now, it has cooled for a few minutes, but it's still quite hot. Yeah, it's still pretty hot, but that's good. You don't want it to cool too much because when we pour the soaking syrup on it, you do want the cake to be warm. Not hot, but warm. Now, while the cake is warm, I am going to do something I do with every single bundt cake, and that is give it a shake. And I go all around, give it a toss up. There we are. You see how the cake, it jumps up out of the pan? That is a way of ensuring that the cake is released from the pan before you even think of pouring anything on it or tipping it out of the thing. If you don't do that and it is perhaps stuck to the pan, when you just dump it out, it's stuck to it and it's going to yank away, tear away, instead of doing this little up and down motion. Just releases the cake from the pan without the cake having to tear away from the pan in case it's stuck. That's just a little tip. Do that with every single pound cake and you will not have to worry about bits of it sticking to the pan. Okay, so the syrup is ready. It's turning a little orange color, but that's okay. I'm gonna set it aside for a minute and I'm gonna take a cake tester and I'm gonna poke holes into the cake. This just allows the syrup to soak in. So just poke your holes all around the cake. Oh, look at all those pretty little cranberries in there. Okay. Poke holes in. And then I'm going to take a little bit of vanilla bean paste. Actually, I'm going to use quite a bit. And just mix it into the syrup. That smells so good. Oh, wow. Incidentally, the orange peel that's in here will become slightly candy orange peel too. So there's a bonus. And I'm just going to pour this soaking syrup right on top of the cake. So over she goes. This smells good. Now you can pour some on, you can reserve some to pour it on the other side of the cake as well if you, okay, a little bit more. And there we are. And I think that's good. And I'm just going to fish out the orange slices and use those as part of the decoration. So now you need to let this sit for a few minutes to give it the opportunity to soak into the cake, and it should only take it about 15-20 minutes. Okay, so the cake has all of the soaking syrup. I need to stop smelling this. It smells so good. Okay, I am just going to turn it out onto a small cake board, and whoop, over she goes, and then just lift it off. Here, be quick. There we go. Ooh. Oh, thank you, Jesus. That is beautiful. Thank you, Jesus. Wow. And as you can see, the cake pan is clean. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to wash that soon because you want to make sure nothing sits in it. And I have a little teeny cake stand here. I'm just going to set that on that. And, oh, wow, this looks so good. Look at all the little pieces of, you can see little pieces of cranberry in there. That looks good. Okay, and then I'm just going to dress it up. It doesn't really need much of a dressing, this cake. I don't think it really needs anything. But I'm just going to decorate it with a couple of cranberries and those orange zest pieces that we had left over from the soaking syrup. Okay, I'm just going to fish those little orange pieces out. You can toss these in powdered sugar if you wanted to, just to make them kind of more like crystallized sugar. I'm not terribly excited about doing that, so I'm not going to, but if you wanted to, you absolutely can. But I'm just going to lay those orange pieces right on top. I think with the syrup itself, I think that'll be plenty sweet enough. So let me space this out so that everybody is spaced out nice and evenly. And then I've just got a couple of cranberries here that I'm just going to set right on top. These may be stubborn and refuse to stay, and I won't be surprised if they don't fall off because they can be a little bit hard-headed. So don't be surprised if they don't wish to stay. You could also fill the center up with cranberries as well. That will work equally nicely too. Just fill the center up with cranberries. And there you are, a delicious cranberry pound cake that my family will love. Now you can dust the top with powdered sugar if you want it to. I'm not going to. I will leave that up to family if they want to sprinkle on more sugar. I personally like it just the way it is, but if you wanted to, you could dust the top with powdered sugar. Yeah, it's not the world's biggest pound cake, but I think my cousin, for whom this is for, my cousin is really going to enjoy this one. So yeah, she likes old-timey family favorite recipes. So this one is especially for her. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you won't miss out anytime I upload a new recipe. And the recipe for this cake will be in the description box below. So I am going to pack this cake up and head over to my cousin's house and give this to her. And I hope she enjoys it, and I hope you guys enjoy the recipe. By the way, if you give the recipe a try, leave a comment and let me know what you think about the recipe. And, good Lord willing, I will see you guys again in another video. Take care, y'all. Bye.